So my socials have been blowing up recently following the announcement of 2 tribute concerts in honor of Taylor Hawkins. There's one in LA, there's one in London. They're both happening later this year, and tickets recently went on sale. Now, of course, Taylor was the longtime drummer of the Foo Fighters, who we lost earlier this year, and Foo Fighter fans have been kind of devastated. But following the announcement of the tribute concerts, they've been sharing online their favorite Foo Fighter moments, their favorite Taylor moments, and some of their favorite memories from Studio 666, the horror movie that the Foo Fighters put out that they secretly filmed during the pandemic. And I realized I've never actually seen it. So I decided to go ahead and watch it. And I am here to share with you my thoughts on Studio 666. Just a heads up, I'm going to make sure that there's no major spoilers, but there's going to be little things that I bring up that might spoil, say, some of the jokes.
Is that cocaine?
Mm-hmm.
No spoilers on kind of the main content or things like that beyond what you probably already know. But first,
1, 2, 3, 4.
let's look at what the critics thought of this movie. And of course, there's a combination, right? Because sometimes it's actual critics, but then there are organizations that kind of do this. There are ratings from people that have actually watched the movie, and there's a whole range of ratings out there. So I kind of looked at the ones that I saw the most frequently online. So first, Amazon Prime, 4.3 out of 5 stars. I spend a lot of time on Amazon, don't judge me. iTunes, 3.9 out of 5 stars. I spend very little time on iTunes, but occasionally I do.
What kind of goal is that?
IMDb, 5.7 out of 10. Metacritic, 50%. And Rotten Tomatoes, 56%. So this is kind of a mixed bag. It seems like the people tend to like it a little bit more than the critics, the organizations. It's probably not surprising. It's a horror movie mixed with music. To kind of specific niches that talk to specific people, although there is a lot of overlap, if we're being honest. So I can see a lot of times, if you're not really understanding those worlds, or if you're only understanding horror but not necessarily the music side, it could get muddled. That's okay, because the only thing that I really care about are my own thoughts, which is why I'm going to now give you my critique of Studio 666.
5, 6, 7, 8.
Now, one thing that I really appreciated is that it really started out like a horror film. I thought it set the mood perfectly. You kind of get this flashback to, a long time ago, the 90s, which I can't believe is now considered a long time ago, but that's just me showing my age. But then, during that flashback, you've got the murder, and I thought it actually did a really good job of establishing, yes, this is the Foo Fighters, but this is a horror movie, and it truly is meant to be a horror movie. So I thought that setup was perfect. The special effects, I will say, probably on par of like the original Ghostbusters. So, they did a good job with some of it. Some of it was very obvious that it was special effects, but it was fun still. You definitely got the you got the gore, you got the murder. And then, of course, sticking with the horror movie genre, there's a lack of logic, right? For instance, when all of a sudden you realize there's people being murdered around you, you would call the cops.
I'm calling the cops.
No cops.
And if someone were to just all of a sudden stop you and say, whoa, no cops, you would probably run, right? Like, you probably wouldn't deal with that. But in a horror movie, you gotta kind of throw logic out the window sometimes to allow the horror to occur. Now, in terms of the music aspect, there are a number of things that really spoke to me, and I think probably speak to a lot of musicians out there, or music fans, but especially musicians. A lot of the premise is around writer's block. Dave Grohl is having writer's block. They're trying to write their 10th album, and that's kind of what drives them to look for a new environment that gives them to this house where horror occurs. And I think we've all experienced that, especially if we've been playing for a while, where you just feel a little uninspired. You don't really have anything new to write, but you break through it eventually. There are other jokes throughout that are really specific to musicians. One of my favorites was definitely the placement of the snare drum.
Yeah, just like a quarter of an inch that way. Just a little.
Dave Grohl just sitting there having his tech, quarter inch that way,
It's like a hair more.
a hair more.
Ah, it's too far. I bring it back.
That's just fun and horribly accurate.
Did you hear that?
I did.
Sweet, huh?
Whatever, Dave.
There's one joke in particular that I was kind of surprised hit as well as it did, and that was L sharp. They're trying to find the key. Dave Grohl says it's L sharp.
What key is this in?
L sharp.
Every musician knows there's no such thing as an L sharp, so usually jokes like that usually aren't that funny.
You found a new musical note?
Came to me last night. Just dropped in my head like boom.
They actually start going through the theory to try to go, how do we make this work?
So the L sharp, that's just basically an E flat, like an octave up.
Oh, they're like leaning into this, and that actually makes it funny. Now, you've got the horror, you've got the music. There's also a good bit of comedy throughout. I think that's what really pulls it all together. I mentioned the L sharp. That was a joke that hit for musicians, or at least for me as a musician. But there's just other things. Jeff Garlin appears pretty early on. He's absolutely hysterical.
The devil rules all of rock and roll.
What?
There's some really cool cameos in there.
What? You're Dave Grohl.
And then Pat Smear, his scream makes my heart sing. Here's what I'll say about the movie as a whole. It's fun. It's silly. It is the Foo Fighters trying to act, sometimes doing a good job, sometimes not.
I'll tell your wife if you tell my wife.
I'll tell my own wife, but someone's got to talk to my kids.
What am I gonna tell my grandma?
Oh, I can call your grandma. She loves me.
But don't be fooled. It is still a horror movie. It has gore. It has supernatural elements.
Can it, drummer boy?
Musicians will love the references, but I understand that, some non-musicians, it may just kind of fall flat. It does accurately show the way that bands interact with each other, which is primarily just trying to come up with creative ways to tell the other to F off, and making innuendo of all sorts of things, including someone's grandmother.
She loves me.
And occasionally they play music. But it's mostly the other stuff. Now, before we close out, I want to go read some of the comments. Now that I've seen the movie and I have my own opinion, I want to kind of see what's out there on the interwebs that's being said about it.
1, 3, 5, 7.
So we're going to go through some comments and, kind of highlight my favorite ones. It was such a blast watching this movie. You could tell everyone had fun making it, and the gore is fantastic. I couldn't see it in theaters as they weren't showing it anywhere near here, but I've already pre-ordered my own Blu-ray. Check it out. It's a fun time. This movie had more F-bombs than I ever heard, which is horrible. I quit watching after 15 minutes.
Dude, what the f?
What do you think band people are like? It's non-stop F-bombs and innuendo. Do you know how hard it is for me to not drop the F-bomb every other word on this channel? I'm trying to keep it somewhat family friendly. So this one gave it 6 out of 10 stars. It says exactly the B-movie ride I was expecting. I don't know if some misguided people were expecting to walk into a polished Hollywood big budget masterpiece, but that was exactly never the MO here. The trailer showed us that. The acting sometimes verges on cringe-makingly awful, but the kills, thrills, and gore are plentiful, and overall, the film is fun, even if it does sometimes meander aimlessly. That's true. You can tell they had fun making this, also true. Our beloved Foos do well with what they're given, but in terms of script, even if they're not given an awful lot, their sense of fun prevails. Yeah, I agree with all of that. I'm not here to say this is a masterpiece by any means. It is a fun movie, know what you're getting into. It's B-movie magic. You're going to love it if you're a Foos fan. As per usual, Dave is the main feature of the movie. It's campy and gory. If you don't like gore, like me, shut your eyes through those scenes. Opening scene is very gory, trust me. I don't think it was necessary because many a young person going into children level will watch this and find those scenes possibly disturbing. I thought the opening scene was absolutely necessary. They needed to establish that this is not a music film. This is a horror film. I thought that was extremely important. I thought the opening scene was critical for that.
Talk to Jimmy Page if you don't like it.
9 out of 10. So much fun. Forget all these so-called serious reviewers, because this movie is anything but serious. It's hilariously bad acted. The only ones that can act a little are Dave and Taylor, and the story is paper thin. But God, I had so much fun watching this. Awesome kills, great effects, brilliant cameos. It's fantastic. Sort of an old school B horror movie, but then executed really good. It absolutely helps if you like Foo Fighters and or are a musician. But forget all bad reviews, pour yourself a drink and put this movie on with your sound system cranked to the max. You'll absolutely love it. I appreciate that. They're not hiding anything. They're not saying this is going to be, you know, the best movie you've ever seen in the world. They're just saying, look, put all that noise to the side and just have fun with it. Because that's what the Foo Fighters did when they made it. They just had fun with it. If you have any thoughts, drop them in the comments below. Make sure you like the video if you liked it. Make sure to like the video if you didn't like it. Why? Because algorithm. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. You keep making beautiful music, and I will see you in the next one.